Alrighty. Welcome to another exciting edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name is Robert Winters.
I'm Craig Kelley.
And our other co-host, Susana, will...
She's invisible.
She's right. She's like, we pour a glass for Elijah.
What's the name of that invisible bunny?
Harvey.
Harvey,
yes. Right.
Harvey here to my left.
Excellent film, by the way. Right. Now, anyway, Susana should be here shortly. But our guest this week... thankfully, because we're almost...
It would have been you. You've been having a monologue.
Just me here chatting, right?
Pulling people off the street.
Right. But anyway, City Councillor Craig Kelley, who's now been an elected City Councillor for how many terms?
This is my fifth. So I've been elected, I guess, 5 times. Once originally and then 4 times re-elected.
So you're becoming like one of the old veterans now.
I'm in the middle. There are 4 people more senior to me and 4 people less senior to me.
Is that how it is now?
Yep. I've always viewed myself as a middle-of-the-road guy, so that's a perfect place to be.
You know, I don't think that's how you were viewed when you first joined the council.
Well, the world has changed.
The world has changed. No, actually, I think it's true. Is when you first were elected, I think I definitely overheard some of the people in city administration going like, "Oh no, this guy's going to be trouble. He's just going to be this and that." And then what was it last year when they were doing the Kendall Square rezoning? I was hearing people saying like, "Yeah, he's a really reasonable guy. He's definitely a guy you could work with." And I thought,
well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, no, it was sort of a kind of a nice evolution to witness, actually. Right.
An evolution of them or of me? Or both?
I think of everything, really, all around, definitely. Now, you're not a townie, as opposed to some of the long-termers like Tim Toomey and David Marr.
I am not.
But you were not from far away.
I am not from far away.
What's your land of your birth?
I was born in Newton. I grew up in Wellesley.
Wait, which village of Newton?
Newton Wellesley Hospital, whatever village that is. I think that's probably Auburndale or someplace like that.
Okay. But your family was actually living in Newton at the time?
No, my family was living in Lexington. I have no idea why I was born in Newton Wellesley, but
it's a good hospital.
It's a fine hospital.
Yeah, definitely.
My siblings, at least one of them was born there, and I think 2 were born in Texas, and I don't know where the other one was. But anyhow, we lived in Lexington for a couple of years, and then my parents moved to Wellesley when I was 2, and they still live there.
Still there, huh?
Yep.
No, and I worked in we're in Wellesley because I actually worked in Wellesley for 14 years. Oh, we passed through it all the time.
So as you go up the street, you know where Grossman's used to be?
Yep.
Go up the top of that hill, and if you made an immediate sharp left, 90-degree left, and go up another hill.
Margus? That's
no. You're before you get to Margus. At the top of the hill from Grossman's, it flattens out.
Yeah.
The immediate 90-degree left is Longfellow Road.
Yep.
And at the very top of that's my parents' house.
Okay. No,
a great, big, beautiful house. It's probably a little bit too big for 2 people.
Actually, one of the things that we probably have greatly in common is that we are regular cyclists. And
cycling to Wellesley from here is a lousy trip.
It is a lousy trip. It's actually I did it one time.
It's terrible.
I did it for my job interview in 1980. I think it was 1982.
I don't recommend people do it. I went out there. Why did I go out there the other night? I took my mom to the ballet.
There you go.
So I biked out Thursday, sort of mid-afternoon, and then biked back in on Friday and got a flat tire in Brookline. But Route 16 is miserable. It's truly miserable bicycling.
It's not even great for driving anymore either, by the way.
I would suspect not.
I was leading a AMC local walkout and starting at the Wellesley College just a week and a half ago. And one thing I noticed I was really thrilled to see, right next to where the Grossman's is, right there, there's that old railroad bridge. I'm sure you sort of ran across that back when it was all
They turned that into a path.
It's now is this brand spanking new looking wooden replacement bridge over the span there. Do you know if they actually connected the piece
I don't know.
The
there's a map that has these trails, and I've never actually done them. Some of them are just the old aqueduct. So the trails on top of the aqueduct, and some of them are train tracks, and some of them are probably imagination.
I lead hikes along some of those aqueducts. It's one of the really great resources for that area.
Oh, they're beautiful. They're beautiful through paths.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, speaking of some of the bike trails, I'm just sort of, if you don't mind, just of rambling on about biking right now. You biked over here now.
Well, just from City Hall. Although I was in New Hampshire for a climate change and resilience conference, and I used a hubway for the first time to get from here to South Station.
I was about to say from here to home.
No,
New
that would
Hampshire,
be-
I tell you. You're
And then from South Station, I biked back to City Hall and picked up my bicycle, but then from there I biked here.
all right. No, I've been really pleased to see some of the new trails, like especially up the one around the new ones that have sort of sprouted out from the Alewife area with more to come. You know,
Right. So those are. I mean, I don't really consider them bike things.
they're
Those,
more
those are recreational
trails.
assets
No, I think
for the region.
we see eye to eye on this.
And
actually.
and they're great to bike on, especially early in the morning
Yeah.
when there's no one else there except maybe the occasional jogger or dog walker.
Yeah.
But they're really not bike paths in the sense of like the Erie Canal as a bike path that goes along it, and there's no one else out there. So
And
it's
you've biked it, I've driven it. The
Yes.
Erie Canal.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I picked it.
Yep. No, that's really a great historical route to go exploring. I enjoyed following the Erie Canal a lot. But I'd say one thing, and this sort of, maybe I'm sort of segueing into something else here, but the bike path or recreational trail along the Alewife Brook Parkway is one example of where I think those little side paths are actually good in that I wouldn't want to necessarily ride a bike on it.
I keep thinking I have to ride that. I don't know how that connects from Alewife to the junction of Route 16 and Mass Ave. But I bike that intersection all the time because
Yeah.
we go up to the Cappy for
Yep.
movies.
Yeah.
And I think if I go to the right, I go to Medford. If I go to the left, I guess I go to Alewife, but I have no idea where they fit a path there. Have you done
Right.
it, that part of the path?
Yeah.
So where,
Wait,
how does it cross over?
you're talking about crossing over Route 16?
Right, so Route 16 has the Alewife Brook alongside it.
Yeah.
And alongside that, on the Medford side of Mass Ave, there's a bike path.
Right.
And then alongside that, on the Alewife side of Mass Ave, it looks like there would be a bike path. But I don't know where that connects to.
Well, there's that one place where there's that kind of crazy bridge over by the cemetery where you sort of cross over to the other side and then it picks up on the other side?
No, you're on the Medford side of things. I'm on
Okay.
the Alewife side of Mass Ave.
Well, we'll just have to bike out there.
Okay, we can do that. I keep thinking I'll try it.
To do that, yeah.
But it's not on my way to anywhere. And that's one of my beefs with a lot of sort of bike facilities.
Yeah.
Is I bike to get places. I like biking. It's good exercise, blah, blah, blah. But mostly I bike because I'm going from point A to point B.
Same here.
And these different bike facilities aren't really on my way. So
No,
it's-
I
if
see
I
them.
want to ride on them, it's usually going to take me an extra several minutes, if not longer, to get to the start, bike along them, and then get off wherever it ends and go to where I want to be rather than just biking on the road.
Yeah, actually, I sometimes see people insist on riding along the Charles River paths, and I say, why don't you just go straight up Mass Ave? You know, so there are some people who are kind of caught into this notion that you're only supposed to ride bicycles on these sort of
I
side
ride the
trails.
Charles River Path every once in a while,
Yeah.
and they're pleasant enough, but they have a lot of little root bumps,
Yeah,
which if you have 110 or 100 psi tires, it's very different from riding a 60 psi or a 45 psi cruiser.
yeah.
And I think people that don't do a lot of biking don't quite realize that it's really not a one-size-fits-all episode at any stretch.
Right. You know, actually, speaking of trails, one of and again, I'm more of a roadway cyclist, and I think you and I have discussed this at various times in the past, and that I'm not a big fan of when the planners try and move the bicycles off
No,
the road.
I am not. I
onto the
love many
sidewalk.
things about this city. I love many things about its staff. I do not think we do bicyclists any favors most of the time.
Not when we do that, certainly.
I struggle to. Cambridge is a great place to bike, but I think it's primarily a great place to bike because it's interesting, because it's dense, because there are lots of places you can bike.
Yeah,
Compared to other places, it tries to fill its potholes. I won't fault the city for not filling potholes, but there are a lot of potholes. I'm not a fan of the bike lanes. I'm not a fan of the cycle tracks. I'm not a fan of our enforcement efforts. You know, I think that our bike corrals are a good idea. I think we need more of them. I think the city's interested in looking into new ways to manage bike parking so we don't get these bikes becoming derelicts on the sidewalk and becoming
I think they need
street
to
furniture.
They need to clear out the racks a little more frequently.
Well, I'm meeting with Owen at some point in the near future to figure out how that might work.
This is O&O Reardon.
Right. So on your cell phone, if you have a smartphone, there's this iReport app.
Yeah.
And there's a bike rack report issue. And it says broken bike rack or install a bike rack, I think. And we need another one that says abandoned bicycle.
Yeah.
So that you could just go on, take a picture of it, log in, abandoned bicycle, and then the DPW would come and check it out, put the tag on it. Now, there's a bike in front of City Hall I've reported twice, and it's still there. So I think we need a little, and I report it under the bike rack because there's not an abandoned bike option.
Sure.
So in the notes, I say this is an abandoned bike. So I think the city needs to get that one right, and then we can crowdsource the enforcement to people that are annoyed at not finding a place to put their bicycle because some bike's been camped out there for 3 weeks and
Actually,
it's growing lilacs.
One of the people from DPW told me if I would just take a piece of chalk and sort of chalk up some of the bikes that were abandoned there, they would come out and start moving them. So they're looking for that.
They've picked a lot up.
Yeah,
it's weird. They moved, by the way, this one in front of City Hall, they moved one from that very spot, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. It just seems like they sprout up from the grass or from the concrete or the brick.
Right.
It's weird. And it's not a lot of them are not bad bikes, and you wonder kind of who puts them there and forgets them.
Yeah, I sometimes eyeball them thinking, should I break the law because I could really use some of those parts?
This is not a bad. This is not a bad single speed, but it'll take you about 3 minutes to cut the lock.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, one of the things that was discussed at the city council meeting last night was
I'm glad one of us was there.
I was there. I was there as your stand-in.
I appreciate that. I hope you voted yes on everything.
I did. I moved unanimous consent to have be recorded in the affirmative. No, one of the things that came up, and it's a topic, you know this has been around for a while, is the future of the Grand Junction corridor, which again, that's more of a recreational trail ultimately, but it's also a pretty useful direct connection.
That one really, I don't mean to say that I'm against bike paths, and I get, at least intellectually, that you got to start with something. And if you put enough somethings down, all of a sudden you wake up and you say, hey, I can get from point A to point Z by a bike facility pretty well. And if you just say, and I'm the sort of guy, if the world listened to me, we would be still drawing with chalk inside caves, because I'm just the guy that never wants anything to change. But if you take a little piece of this and a little piece of that, eventually you get a real network.
Yeah.
And so I can appreciate that is what we're hoping for. I'm not sure we'll get there, but I think the Grand Junction path is just a beautiful place to put what we're thinking of putting there. It's going to cross over the river. It's going to lead into whatever the heck's going to happen over there at the freight yards.
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that there'll be some access. I mean, if you were sort of a semi-related issue was this issue of housing for graduate students, whatever, at MIT, and I looked at that and I said, if they had some reasonable housing over East Somerville, over that way, or if they had some over toward Alston, and I could just sort of hop on that path and just scoot my way right into MIT, that's probably a pretty good housing choice. So I would love to see that kind of fixed up together with some housing.
The Grand Junction path would be a great asset for the city.
I think it would just be a really nice thing, and we'll see how it goes. Let's see. Actually, we'll sort of get on to some of these other things right here now. But one of the things that I think you've been sort of hot on for as long as I've known you has been the Cambridge schools.
Yes.
Public schools. Sometimes to the point where people say, well, wait a minute, why is he on the city council? Why is he on the school committee? Because he often focuses on the schools. And I think that's sort of fair, though I personally think
fair to focus on the schools, or fair
focus
to
on the schools. I mean, I suppose as long as you're not kind of treading on each other's turf, it's absolutely fair game that elected.
Well, I think we ought to tread on each other's turf.
A little bit, yeah.
I think that this siloing of responsibilities is broken. The budget hearing for the school department's tomorrow, and now agreed people may look at.
That's right. In fact, it's at 6 p.m. at City Hall, Sullivan Chamber, Wednesday, March 21st.
That's tomorrow, 6 o'clock.
Right.
So I went over today and looked at who's picked up their school budgets, and you can look at the budgets online. You can get them all sorts of ways. So
sure.
I wouldn't say that people haven't looked at the school budget, but there are still 5 of the budgets that got sent to city councilors in the box. Now, maybe they looked at the information somewhere else, maybe they didn't, but I think we need to be much better at realizing we're partners in this, and I'll go to tomorrow's for a little while. Then I think I can go watch my son perform at the high school.
Yeah.
But this idea that you can have a dump of data and pretend that you're doing something useful, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for the school department to us. It wouldn't work for us to the school department. It doesn't work with the housing authority. It doesn't work with the Health Alliance. I mean, if you have significant issues you want to address, I don't think we're doing anyone any favors by thinking we can do it in one-off conversations.
Right. No, I agree.
Tomorrow's going to be another budget hearing, more or less like last budget hearing was. And what came out of that? You know, lots of, what do they say, sound and fury signifying nothing.
I'll give you my impressions of the relatively recent roundtable, city council, school committee roundtable meeting. I went in there and it sounded like, it just seemed to me like it was a hour and a half of people from the school department trying to sell their stuff.
It was so frustrating. We didn't have I think we might have had an agenda. We had no document. It wasn't a dialogue. It wasn't a discussion.
It wasn't a dialogue.
So if you know, the person I like to say, although my wife doesn't like it when I say this, the person I fight with the most is my wife. Right? There's a lot of reasons for that. We share the most. We're the most intimate. We see the most of each other and so forth. But it doesn't mean that it's bad. And a lot of dialogue, a lot of struggling, a lot of what people would consider to be fighting can be done constructively, but only if folks are willing to engage in the underlying dialogue and share information and so forth. And the city council school committee relationship just has not been a relationship, I don't think, really on either side that wants to do that. And I think it's unfortunate because we have some fabulous stuff going on in our schools, but it's not living at all up to the potential I don't think that it needs to. And that doesn't mean it's not doing a good job for a lot of kids. It's doing a great job for my kids. It's doing a great job for a lot of other kids, but it's not doing a great job for everyone. I don't know, maybe it needs more money, maybe it needs less money, maybe it needs better partnership with other school times. I really don't know what the answer is, but having people talk to me and then the discussion end, and having people talk to other counselors or school committee members or whoever, and having the discussion end at that point doesn't help, I don't think, anyone rethink what we're doing and think of how to do it better.
You know, I don't know so much about how the elementary programs work in the city, and I guess the middle school, or what do they call them, upper schools now?
Upper campuses.
That's relatively new, so I can't say that I know much about that, but I had some of my extension school students, I would ask the ones who came from CRLS to sort of just, size it up for me. And one of the things they said, which actually seemed quite true, and I think is still the case, is that all along it's always been the case that if you really knew what you wanted, if you really had a pretty clear idea of what you wanted to get out of your high school education in Cambridge, you could always get it. There was always resources, there was faculty, there were classes, there were options that were available to you. So the problem wasn't that you were unable to get what you wanted if you knew what you wanted. The difficulty was always more that if you weren't so sure, you were sort of drifting through.
That's, I think, one of the difficulties, and that may be a difficulty with anyone, or with any one system. To me, looking at it from a higher level, it's, if you look at who does well in the Cambridge schools, it's very similar to who does well in sort of any school district across the country. It's typically white or Asian, typically upper income, typically parents with a higher education. All these statistics that are indicators of academic success hold true for us as well. And it would be neat if we could figure out how not to make sure those indicators of success ring true, but we create new indicators of success so that we wind up with a whole lot of people graduating with high levels of academic success that we're not seeing now. They face, by the way, they face a lot of challenges. I mean, so my kid has a room, he's got a bed, he's got a mom and a dad who are married, blah, blah, blah. We have kids who are sleeping on couches. They sleep, eat, and do their homework all in the same 10 square feet of their apartment. We have kids whose parent, maybe single and a significant other, comes in drunk. We have we have kids whose parents are in jail. I mean, we have a lot of kids with challenging social circumstances, and the deal is, how do you compensate for that?
Actually, it's funny because what you're saying is very much in tune with one of the things I'd written in my little notes here before.
What did you write in your notes there?
Yeah, well, it was just sort of like, ideas.
Limitations on how much a school system can do to
cure all of society's ills.
Well,
and I'm going to say that, it's always been my impression that people, I
come that doesn't have an arrow next to it?
Just because I put too many arrows up, I kind of gave up there. No, when you hear criticism, people talk about achievement gaps, whatever, you say, we need to do more teacher training and doing this. I said, I think we have a lot of pretty well-trained teachers here, but you're sort of asking for miracles sometimes too, and I think you have to also be a little reasonable.
I think you're right about that, but I think for me, the low-hanging fruit, and I'm not a teacher, I cannot, as I tell people, I cannot run a birthday party without getting a headache. So,
okay.
God bless the people that teach. And it's difficult.
Well, thank you.
Well, I really didn't mean college, but bless you as well.
Thank you.
And it's difficult to have these conversations without people think you're picking on them. And I know I don't honestly know how to do it. I do not think it is unfair for people within the school department to say Craig is always picking on us.
Yeah.
It's not what Craig means to do. I would prefer not to have my interactions with them or attempted interactions with them be considered as being picking on them or transgressing or whatever. But I can understand how if you're on that side of the fence, you might think that way. That being said, I think that the low-hanging fruit in our district is training and supporting teachers and staff and students and families more about classroom management and school climate. I don't like the word discipline because that brings out the Marine in me, and that is not what I really want our kids exposed to, and I don't think it would be ultimately successful to look at it as a discipline issue. There are some aspects of it that might be discipline. A lot of it is using consistent words and having consistent rules, and there's some very interesting information on the DOE website. There are some self-surveys out there, and if you look at the school climate, we don't rank all that well, and I haven't studied the stats extensively, so just a little snapshot I looked at. It looks like we don't rank all that well with people understanding the rules and feeling that they're implemented in a fair way, and it certainly is backed up by what my kids tell me, which is some teachers will do this, some teachers will do that, some teachers will do this to one kid but not to another kid, because teachers are human just like we are. And they bring their own biases and their attention and whatever else it is that they've got going on. So I might see you do something and not see someone else do it. And then I say, well, Robert, you shouldn't do that, or whatever it is I say. And the kids don't see my internal mechanisms. They just see that Craig did this to one kid and didn't do this to this other kid in the same situation. And I think it takes a very intentional effort to get beyond what is sort of an ad hoc approach.
I had a friend once upon a time who used to say something that was very, very wise. She said, all children have an inherent sense of justice.
That makes sense.
And they're very, very sensitive to issues of fairness and unfairness. So if they feel like
and I think teachers do too. It's just they, I think, often lack the tools. And the little bit of research I've done supports this. That in teaching school, they're not given classes on how do you manage a classroom with this many different people in it who want to do this many different things, and this sort of stuff happens. So my impression is a lot of teachers have to figure that out on their own, and I have no answer. I certainly could not do it, so I'm not passing judgment saying these people are terrible. What I'm saying is we need to figure out a way to better support and train everyone involved in the process. You're talking to one of these parents who is probably a pain in the neck parent in terms of my kid's not getting the whatever or the this or the that. And Cambridge has a lot of people like me.
No,
and it's got a lot of people who never show up, and it's got people in the middle.
Yep.
And
well, we're gonna actually have to take a little break here in about 20 some odd seconds here. But I have to say that to me, I'm astounded that
20 seconds. Go to the high school 7 o'clock tonight.
That's right.
7 o'clock tomorrow night. There are 2 programs, the music programs at the high school.
And if you go there at 7 o'clock tonight, Craig will be there.
I will be there at 7 o'clock tomorrow night.
I may make it there myself. So anyway, we'll be back in 3 minutes. So until then, see you in a bit.
What happens in 3 minutes or for 3 minutes?